Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Nuggets News. Today we welcome a very special guest to the channel to discuss everything happening in India in the world of crypto. And that's Nischal, the CEO and founder of WazirX India. And you've recently been acquired by Binance as well. But for those that haven't followed you, you've got a super interesting background. Forbes 30 under 30, and I know you did some stuff in growth hacking. So what's your background and what led you to crypto?
Yeah, so I started as a software engineer with my career and worked for a couple of years before I started my first startup, which actually started as a side project. Um, this was, in the early days of Twitter, I would say. Twitter was still pretty new, and they had just opened up their platform for API developers. And I thought, I wanted to grow on Twitter. Like back in the day, I think even now, everyone wants a lot of followers. So I said, what's the best way to, reach a large audience? And I realized that I could automate a few things that would put me in front of more people on Twitter. And I built it for myself. Surprisingly, a lot more people want it. And by a lot more, I mean to say over 20 million users now on the product
Yeah.
who wanted to grow on Twitter. So it seemed like a natural fit. And, the product organically started growing. After about a year of working on it during the weekends, I eventually had to quit. So it was never my plan to quit, but the number of people using it and the amount of money that the product started making, it was paying at one point. It was paying me more in a month than my day job was paying me in a year.
Yeah.
So that was the situation, and I quit my job,
Yeah.
and I continued building that product. I raised some venture capital for that, about $2.5 million. We grew the team, we grew the product more, but a point came where the social media networks on which this product was built, they started removing access to some of the APIs that provided growth to people.
Yes.
So now the product is more of a social media management product. It does not help you grow as such, but it helps you manage all your social networks at a single place.
Yes.
So that's working. But because this happened, one of the key things that happened with me was the only reason why these social networks could do this is because of the fact that they control everything, the APIs, the ecosystem.
Yeah.
And that's when I came across this whole decentralization, where I realized even if you are the creator of something, you do not have control over what the ecosystem can do with your product.
Yeah.
I think that was that moment which led me into crypto eventually.
Fantastic. And what's the name of that product for people that are interested?
It's called Crowdfire. It's on the App Store, Play Store, on the web, CROWDFIRE, and you can still use it for a lot more social media features. It's got a ton of users using it even today. I
Fantastic.
have a different team that's managing it because I'm now on WazirX. But yeah.
For sure, for sure. So I know you've mentioned that you were right into tech and experimenting with the latest things, and I think you got into crypto very early on and did some mining and whatnot. And you've got an interesting story with an old laptop you had.
Yeah, so it was a desktop, and if I had a laptop, I would not. So this was the time when the world was transitioning from having a desktop to a laptop,
Yeah,
and and this was, I think, late 2009, when as a techie, you usually just end up being on all online forums and keep reading about the new stuff.
yeah,
And that's when I came across this whole Bitcoin, and I heard that you could mine it. So I wanted to test it out. I remember putting my computer overnight for mining. I don't remember how much it was, I could mine that time, but eventually I ended up selling that desktop for a new laptop. And a few years down the line, when I read about Bitcoin, I was like, "Oh shit! I should have, kept that desktop with me." So I
yeah.
don't know how much I lost. I'm not sad about it, but yeah, that was my, first, I would say, encounter with Bitcoin. And then the second encounter happened in 2012 or 2013, when a lot of these, I would say, wallet apps started coming online. Before that, you had to do a lot of stuff on your own. There was no, like a third party, easy to use apps or websites. So
Yes.
in 2012, 2013, you started hearing a lot about companies actually building wallets for the Bitcoin world.
Yeah.
And that's when I started, trying it out again. And while I liked it, but I think I was so engrossed in my existing product that it was just more of a touch and go for me.
Yeah. So I was going to say,
yeah.
to give people some context, there would have been maybe less than 100 people in the world mining Bitcoin back then. So chances are you probably mined a few blocks and there's probably a few hundred Bitcoin, but we hadn't even had the Bitcoin pizza day yet, so they probably didn't have any value back then.
Yeah, I mean, so it was, it was more of a, you could do something like this, let's try it out.
Yeah.
There was nothing beyond it, and you could mine it on a desktop. That was the beauty of it. You can't do that today.
Yeah.
I mean, you wouldn't be able to mine a block. But when you come across stuff, you just try it out. You never know what happens.
For sure. Now, I know you're saying that it was pretty hard to buy crypto in India, even in 2013. And I know in Australia, I couldn't find anywhere to buy it in 2012 when I first read about it. So what is the history of crypto in India and that regulation now where it currently stands? Because I know there's probably three different pieces of the puzzle, isn't there? What the central bank wants, what the government want, and what regulators want. And that's for all countries.
Yeah, see, I think the history of crypto in India, if you were to look at it, I think it more or less started gaining ground around 2013 or 2014, when a couple of the first few exchanges in the country started cropping up. And they were not really exchanges. They were more of, I would say, the whole broker model where they would sell the Bitcoins to people. They would buy the Bitcoins from them, have a spread in between, and they benefited from that.
Yeah.
So I think exchanges cropped up in India only in 2017, like the true open order book exchanges. They cropped up only in the 2017 bull run. Before that, you had these products that would just buy from probably outside the country and source that and sell it to you.
Yeah.
And if you sold it to them, they would charge, like, they would pay you less than 80% or 70% of the market value. They would just get it cheap from you. So that's how this whole thing functioned for a long time in India. But 2017 is when I think everyone started building products for specific for this country. And that's when we also decided to build it. We eventually launched in 2018 March. But I think now the ecosystem's matured out. A few players, not many in the ecosystem, but it's now, I would say, the products are on par with global products today.
And so you mentioned the brokers that take a bit of a fee either side as well. Was there a local Bitcoins, and was that very big in India the last few years?
I think local Bitcoins, I think the last couple of years, yes. But before that, we had, one of the products that, early products that existed in India was ZepPay, which, eventually they exited India. But they were like one of the, early movers in the space where they started with that whole, buy and sell broker kind of a model. Eventually, they too went to the open order book. But they were one of the, I would say, the early players in the ecosystem to, be there.
Yeah, I've had ZepPay on the channel. Again, that was another fantastic interview, and they were one of the companies that did leave India. So I know you've got some thoughts around the proposed bill, and how it currently stands with the regulation, a straight order book exchange versus maybe the peer-to-peer and just coordinating sales of crypto.
Yeah, see, for your audience and for whoever does not understand what's happening in India, we could lay it down for them. So until 2017, Indian government or Indian banks never had a problem with crypto. That's because it was all under the radar. Nobody cared about it. The 2017 bull run is where I think it's not just India but globally, everyone started taking notice of what is Bitcoin. I think that $20,000 mark was like the wake up call for all the regulators, all the authorities everywhere, especially in India. So when this happened, a couple of things started happening in India. First was that in December, I think around November or December 2017, our government set up a committee comprising of a few bureaucrats who were supposed to come up with the next I would say direction for crypto in India. And that committee eventually came up with the whole draft bill which wants a ban on crypto in 2019, I think this year. After 2 years of the committee being formed, they came up with a draft suggestion. But before these guys could come up with something, the Central Bank of India, they came up with a circular that said that none of the banks in India should deal with any crypto-related activities. There, the targets were all these exchanges, including us, where our bank accounts were supposed to be shut down after 3 months
Yeah.
of the circular coming out. And that's where I think the first major impact for the crypto ecosystem in India happened, because now all the exchanges had to close their bank accounts.
Yeah.
Some of the exchanges decided not to do anything about it. Like, they probably they thought that this would go away, but it's been over a year and a half now. The circular hasn't changed. You still can't get a bank account as an exchange in India.
Yeah.
What we did as WazirX is we realized that we'll have to adapt to these changing circumstances. Because if you look at crypto regulations globally, the funny part is everyone wants to talk about it, nobody wants to solve it. It's not a solved problem today.
Yeah.
Everyone's just discussing. So we knew that this is going to take a long time. Let's find a solution, and that's where the whole peer-to-peer system was built by WazirX for the first time in India, and people loved it because we built it very differently from your traditional local bitcoins. If you look at local bitcoins, it's a new way of buying and selling, because that's these listings. You have to go through each of the buyers and sellers. You have to take the decision yourself: who's a good buyer, who's a fraud, who's a bad person. But on our exchange, you do not have to do any of these. You just have to fill your buy or sell form, and we automatically match you with the best price. And you just have to make your fund transfer to the seller's bank account.
Yeah.
That's all. So there's no listing, there's no going through what's right for you. And that people loved it because it was the same experience as trading on a traditional exchange.
Yeah.
The same order book. If you see it, so by the way, till you do not place that buy order, you will not realize it's P2P. You will think that it's just a crypto to crypto kind of a trading experience. So that was amazing.
Yeah.
And people loved it. And that made us go viral, in India. And so while this banking thing was happening and while we found a solution, the committee that was set up in 2017 came up with the bill in 2019. Now this is just a proposal, okay? And it's not by the government, it's by an independent committee set up by the government. So it's not like our government speaks about that bill, that it's coming up with it.
Yes.
This is just a suggestion by the committee that this is how it should be done. I don't know if you've read the bill, but the unfortunate thing about the bill is it's more superficial at the surface level. It does not talk about, for example, it just thinks of crypto as a currency. So that's the only goal. This is a currency. We have our own currency, INR. This is a competitor, and it should be banned.
Yeah.
So that's the premise. It does not talk about crypto as a security, as a utility, or anything apart from currency.
Yeah.
It's like they've literally taken the whole term cryptocurrency and they said, this is bad for the country.
Yes.
But I think it's still a step in the right direction, because now we can at least have a dialogue with the government. Before this, even this proposal came in, we had nothing from anywhere, no authority which speaks about anything related to crypto.
Yeah.
So while it looks dangerous, this bill, because it also suggests a 10-year jail term if you hold crypto, if it comes into effect, which will be, I think, 5 million people will have to be jailed eventually if this bill comes into effect. So I don't think this is going to happen. But yeah, I think it's at least a starting point for us in India. We can at least start to talk about it.
Yeah, I think that's an issue for people that are getting into the space as well, just the terminology, as you say, cryptocurrency versus digital assets. And an Australian company like Power Ledger has got lots of trials going on in India. So they've got a cryptocurrency, and does that mean that they're banned? Or is anyone using blockchain? Or if IOTA goes there and they're using a Tangle, where do you draw this line if they just say that all cryptocurrency is banned?
Right. So this is what, I see this as a stage one of, the evolution and going towards the right regulation. Stage one is where, any country, if it is at stage one, it's going to say blockchain is good and crypto is bad. Yeah. And that's the narrative. The stage two will be where they will say, blockchain is good. Certain cryptos are probably good. The rest are bad. So I think we are at stage one. I don't know where. I see a few countries at stage two.
Yeah.
But the eventual would be, where they say that this is all technology. You do it the way you want. Just make sure money laundering and terrorism financing and all of these are taken care of. I think that's how it should be. I think it's wrong for countries to even classify what crypto is good, what crypto is bad, because it's all technology in the end.
Yeah. Now, in Australia at the moment, there's a proposed bill to ban cash over $10,000, and they're talking about dropping that down, and it's under the guise of terrorism financing and money laundering. Now, I know in India, they recently stopped the high denomination notes, and as you say, they're saying bad crypto, it's competition. is there any statistics to say that the crime and money laundering and terrorism financing is very minimal in India, because there is that evidence in Australia to prove them wrong? And do you think it is just the competition for their own currency that they're worried about?
Yeah, see, it's a very good question. We haven't been, able to get our hands on any statistics to prove any of these things.
Yeah.
It's more, it's more a feeling that this is how it is. And I would love to get my hands on some statistics in India, but I don't think there's anything publicly available for us to look into.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, if you see, the biggest pain point right now being shown about crypto is about, money laundering and financing of terror.
Okay.
Though we've been very vocal saying that cash is a better instrument for all of these activities compared to crypto, because at least in crypto you can implement KYCs, you can know where the entry and the exit point of crypto to fiat is, because ultimately these all these nefarious activities need cash to function. So we have our solutions to this, and this is where we need to put it forward to our government, saying that a terrorist or a money launderer would be stupid to use cryptos, because everything is trackable compared to cash, where it's completely offline and nobody would know.
Exactly. I talked to the Australian regulators, and that's my message as well. And it's actually helped them catch some people, because it is a public ledger and it's there forever as well. It's not like you've just got a year to catch them either.
Right.
The next thing I wanted to talk about was the ID system, so KYC and all these rules. And I know India has some really interesting ID systems in terms of what they've done compared to other countries. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so we have something called as Aadhaar, which is like a unified ID. Like throughout the country, everyone has that Aadhaar ID, which can be used for KYC.
Yeah.
The problem with that is when it launched, there was a way for people to authenticate themselves using Aadhaar through APIs, so all the companies could do it. But somewhere down the line, there were these privacy-related issues, and there were problems with data leakage, companies not being responsible enough to keep those data private, because when you authenticate with one product, if the data leaks from there, all your identity information, everything is leaked.
Yeah.
So we are at a situation today where the access to this is given selectively based on what sort of companies are there and what's their background. Are they able to keep the data safe? So it's not very open today for everyone to build. But I think eventually we'll reach a stage where the government will figure out a way to give access to more companies. And that'll be a relief, because then you do not have to do all of this KYC and stuff. Because right now, as a consumer, you have to go to every product, you have to do your KYC all over again. As a company, you have to spend KYC costs, and each company has to spend it individually.
Yeah.
So when this really becomes a reality, where this API-based KYC, I think it'll be an amazing thing for India. And it's on the way, now.
So previous to that, I believe there was like 100 different systems or regions that had their own. It was really messy, and it was the smartphones or just basic phones, and I guess the digital technology that allowed this. So is that the reason for the big improvement? And do you think this is something that could benefit from blockchain and the ID work going on in that space?
Yeah, I think so. If you think about it, what has happened with the Aadhaar system, in a way, it's centralized today, and but it has information. But as a citizen, you really don't control it. So let's say if a similar system existed on the blockchain where you control everything, then you have to decide whether you want to give the information to company A, B, C, or someone else.
Yes.
So I think this can be seen as a precursor to eventual where your data is on a blockchain, but you control it, not like the government has to take care of it. Or someone else has to take care. I think that'll be a good progression.
Are you familiar with Vinny Lingham and the work he does at Civic?
So I've heard of Civic. I've heard of Vinny, but I've never spoken. I don't know him personally. But I've heard of this product, the Civic thing.
Yeah, and I think he's kind of doing what we're talking about. And I'm pretty sure he's got some Indian heritage. So, yeah, that's a very interesting project that I'll cover more in future for everyone at home as well. The next thing I want to talk about was the population and the rise of the middle class. So we've kind of seen it in China a little bit. And I know there's some big opportunities for different countries or even continents. So how do you view the Indian economy at the moment? And I know they've got some different beliefs to the West and values and whatnot. So yeah, I'd just love to hear your thoughts about what's happening there.
Yeah, see, I think in India right now, we have a huge middle class, and it's an ever growing middle class, and this is where a ton of the purchasing power in the country comes from, because it's a large number. I don't have the number with me right now, but it's a large number, and it's ever growing. Every year, we are adding millions of people to the middle class. And I think this section of the society is where all the progress will happen. All the companies try to vie for these kind of this section of the society. And if you see China, it's very similar, but I would say there's years ahead of us in terms of the size of the middle class, the growth of the middle class, and India is probably going to reach there. It'll take some time.
Yeah.
But I think one of the biggest differences I see in the behavior of the audience, if you look at China, it has a very different, closed, I would say, new kind of culture where it is not very similar to anywhere else.
Yeah.
But in India, what happens is we use a lot of products which are globally available. For example, like in China, your search engine is very specific to your region, or you have a different version of your own Twitter and Facebook and YouTube.
Yeah.
But in India, we use everything that's more or less used by people globally. Unless there's an offline component where you have to be in this country to integrate and build it. If it's a purely online product, Indians use the same products as the rest of the world.
Yeah.
Be it your YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I mean, you name a product which is global and which is being used globally, Indians definitely are on that product.
Fantastic.
So I think this growth of the middle class of India, I think, will benefit the global, I would say, the global internet, not just like the local internet. The more people come online, if you look at it, the stocks of Facebook and Amazon as well go up.
Yeah.
It's not just Indian companies that benefit, but it's a global thing for everyone to benefit. So I think it's very motivating to see the Indian middle class adding up and growing, because it adds to the world economy. So that's a good thing, I think.
For sure. I think we forget about the sheer number of people in China, India, throughout Africa and Southeast Asia. And if you were to say that 0.5% of people use Bitcoin in Australia, that's only 100,000 people. But you just threw out the figure of 5 million, which is 0.5% of a billion people. Is that figure got anything, any facts behind it, or?
So the way I see it, and I think I'm probably underreporting that number. I just saw all the app downloads, the products, specifically focus on the Indian audience.
Yes.
And collectively, I think they have around 5 to 7 million. And then, you look at a few of the sources of traffic for a few of the global large exchanges and other products. Then you realize that, X percentage of their audience is from India.
Yeah.
And that's how I back calculated. And I think to be, I would say, very, very upbeat about it, I would say it's probably 7, 8 or 10 million. But I want to be safe, so I'm just saying 5 million. And it's still a good number, I think.
And were the majority of those in the 2017 boom, or is it a little bit different where we've seen things like Venezuela, Chile, Argentina, where there's actually been a bit of an increase recently?
I think 2017 definitely is like the biggest winner.
Yeah.
That was like the biggest motivation for a lot of Indians to get in. But I've seen surprisingly towards the end, the second half of 2018, there have been bumps in the number of people coming into crypto. That's probably because of more awareness being spread in India around what crypto is. But 2017 just takes the cake, because you don't have to convince people in 2017. They just came in.
Yeah.
Right now, you have to convince them about but that's a good thing right now, because it's not like mindless money coming in. It's thought through. People want to first understand what this is, why they're putting their money, and then they come in. So it's a far better audience that's coming in right now, more informed compared to 2017.
So what is the biggest problem that it is going to solve in India? Do you think it is, I talk about the unbanked, and they're just going to skip, just like they skip phone lines and go to mobile phones, they're going to skip banking and go to payment systems with cryptocurrency on phone apps. Is that the sort of things that excite you most, to open up the economy and e-commerce and that type of thing?
I think I have quite a few things that excite me about crypto and India, because I see, the thing is, crypto is so I would say so innovative, and so new that as an entrepreneur, when you think about it, you can think of 500 ideas that you could build on,
Yeah.
So, but if I was to put my finger on a couple of them, I think what you spoke about, the unbanked, that's a major thing. And if you look at history, like you rightly said, including India, we've skipped the PC generation and we've directly onboarded ourselves to mobile phones. And that's how even I think today the first time people go online is probably from a mobile phone, not a computer. So and that's probably how a few years down the line we'll say that the first time people are getting access to banking is probably through a mobile phone and crypto. I think that's how this will happen, where uh, uh, a large portion of India will be part of the financial ecosystem through crypto rather than traditional banking.
Yeah.
Because traditional banking needs a lot of infrastructure which has to be present locally, and that's going to be very very hard to build throughout India. Because we have a country which is massive in terms of the number of villages in India. That's like we've got tens of thousands of villages across the country, and it's hard for banks to be present all of these places. They still, I think, the capacity right now, even in the cities, is not completely there yet. They're still building out in the cities. So I think that's going to be this massive. But one of the things that I'm very very confident about working out, and I keep telling about this, is access to capital. I think if you look at there are quite a few countries where there's a lot of capital available in the market, which is why your cost to capital goes to maybe 1% or 2%. When you take a loan, you pay 2%, 3%, or 4%.
Yeah.
We pay 10 to 15% in India when we take a loan. And I think that disparity is only because today financial stuff is I would say bounded by your geography.
Yes.
It's
100%.
You're in Australia, you have a different financial system. We are in India, we have a different financial system. But that's not the case with the educational system or the information system, because the internet has broken all these barriers. And I think crypto will break all the barriers of capital, so that someday we'll all be paying the same rate of interest and we'll be enjoying access to the same kind of capital liquidity in the markets. So when that happens, I think that'll be crazy for India.
We did an episode with a gentleman in Africa who's talking about this problem as well. And it's funny, in Europe, they've got negative interest rates. They can't give money away. And yet here we are having a high definition, video chat in different sides of the world, but we can't move money and capital. And he was saying that they get all their inventory in on the first day of the month and it's sold out by the second day of the month, but the banks will only lend to them once a month. So I just think crypto is going to completely disrupt all this. And I know you're pretty passionate about DeFi, and that's just another example of someone in India that might earn $10 a month. If they can get 10%, lending out their $10 and turning it into $11, that is huge for someone in India, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's the thing. And these are all permissionless systems being built. You as an entrepreneur, I think about the ease for an entrepreneur. If you had to build into the traditional financial system, you first need to know at least 10 other people who are connected to 10 other banks for you to get access to some API. Forget going live, but I think even to try something out, it'll take you months to build a POC or a first version, an MVP.
Yeah.
And then take crypto. I know of 20-year-olds in India. So there's a product called InstaDApp, built by 18. They were 18 or 19, two brothers. And it's probably now one of the top DeFi apps in the world. And it's like 18-year-olds, 18-year-old going to a banking institution, they would just send them out. They would just send them back saying, don't build. But DeFi never stops you. You can be anyone, anywhere in the world, and you can build for anyone, anywhere in the world. I think that's crazy.
I know InstaDApp. I had no idea that was built by two 18-year-olds in India. And it's funny. I know we had some people at one stage saying that, India and people, developers there and whatnot, there's scammers and whatnot. But there's so many talented talented developers, and their wages and whatnot is way lower than what you could get a developer in the US or Australia, isn't it? And they're probably going to do just as good a work.
Yeah, I mean, see, the thing is, it's all about opening up markets, and then you see what talent can do. And talent can emerge from anywhere, not just India. It can be anywhere, And I think it's just that we have more people, so we have more talent. Countries with lesser population have lesser number of people. So I think proportionally it's the same.
Yeah.
But the thing is, it should never be that because you're born in one country, you do not have access to or opportunities compared to someone else born in a different country. I think
Yeah.
we should all go towards one world, and I think crypto is solving that in a major way
So
for everyone.
the next thing I wanted to just talk about was that penetration. So, do you have the latest statistics around? I've heard that 90% of people now have a phone, and half of that is a smartphone. And I've heard, in these regional towns now, they've got crude little solar setups to charge their phones and some laptops in schools. Do you see all this stuff sort of flourishing at the moment?
Yeah, I think so. If you read about the recent number, I think India just crossed about 500 million people online, and that's probably more than the population of the United States. And we still haven't reached. I think it's just 50% penetration or something
Okay.
in terms of internet access.
Okay.
So to speed this up, a lot of things are being done. A lot of and by the way, most of this penetration is in what we call in the tier one and the tier two markets, which is the cities and probably a notch lower.
Yeah.
But there's a large portion of people who still do not have access to mobile phones and internet. And there are new companies which are focusing only on these, the next, I would say, 100 million or 200 million people who can be brought online. So probably in the next 2 to 3 years, you will see a lot more Indians coming online.
And do you know if they're? I take it they're not rolling out, copper and fiber to all these places. Are they going for 4Gs and 5G technology, the wireless stuff, and satellite internet?
Yeah, right now it's mostly 4G. I'm not sure where the state of the country is with 5G. I think they're still debating on the which bandwidth I think to go with or something like that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about the tech. But 4G is huge right now, and that's what is being spread in the country.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So I was going to ask you about your favorite project. So you mentioned DeFi. I've got my Ethereum t-shirt on. I love Bitcoin and Ethereum, but I'm also very interested in other countries. We've got, Dash is really taking off in some developing nations. And with Bitcoin, if it does get congested and someone in India wants to send $1, they don't really want to pay 20 cents. So do you see like Litecoin, Dash, or the Lightning Network? Do you see that stuff being really important as well?
See, I definitely think that there will always be like a layer one, layer two solution to all of these blockchains because
Yes.
Blockchains have this problem. Do you go for stability? Do you go for security, or do you go for speed?
Yeah.
And I think when it comes to the core, I think security, stability is more important than speed because speed can be solved by your external work that is being done, which is Lightning is one of them. And I think somewhere, and to be honest, see the thing is, the funny thing is people say it's so hard to set that up, and you have to lock stuff. You have to, you can also lose money, but honestly, when technology is first built, developers don't care about all of these. They first care about how do you solve the problem. And once they solve it, you will always forget how hard the setup was, how hard it was to onboard yourself.
Yeah.
So this is all just, just development pains, which you see all the time in every industry. I mean, think about mobile phones. So I was just reading about it. The first ever time when an SMS was sent, there was no way to reply back, apparently. So, and if that time, if you heard all the news, they would say, "Oh, you can only receive messages, you can never send it." That does not mean that SMS never worked. SMS took off in a beautiful way. So, I think these layer two scaling solutions and all will come in, and they'll solve the speed problem. So, I'm not worried about the speed problem. I think that will definitely be solved. Which crypto gets adopted? I think honestly, it's more about what sort of community can be built by each of these products and projects. I think it depends on that because ultimately, whether I use Bitcoin or Litecoin or Dash, I think it's all about who's the people around me. What are they using? So if you can build a community around your stuff, I think it'll eventually work out for that project.
And just on that train of thought, do you have any? Libra is so divisive, Facebook's currency, and you mentioned that there's a lot of people on Facebook in India. So do you think that solves a problem for them having like a basket sort of special drawing right type currency? Or do you think that the store of value and the scarcity aspect and them being able to save a tiny amount of money that will hopefully grow if they held Bitcoin instead of something that's, pegged to the US dollar and the euro and whatnot? Do you have thoughts around that?
See, I think I see them too differently. Like I see Libra and other projects that are similar to that, including so for example, Binance has the Venus project. So I see these more as true ways of just I think money transferring instantly amongst each other. But I don't see them as investments because they're supposed to be stable coins. And I see Bitcoin and everything else as investments. So it's two. If you want to invest, go to the place where there's scarcity, because then that's deflationary and you'll grow your wealth.
For sure.
But I think projects like Libra and Venus, I think the beauty of that is, you know, take for example today, if you want to take a payment, like me and you, I don't know how we will traditionally transfer money between each other, or if you want to tip me like $5 or something, and if this is happening on Facebook, and if Facebook has one button, or maybe if this app had a button, just put a number and just send it. It's like sending an SMS or sending a message.
Yeah.
I think these products, the products like Facebook, which has 2 billion users, I think when they implement it, the true power of the whole crypto ecosystem emerges. So I'm more excited about that. I don't know who the winners would be, but I think these are all experiments and these are all ways to show the world what crypto can do. So from that point of view, I'm very excited about these kind of projects.
For sure. Now, you guys have just been acquired by Binance, and they've gone pretty aggressive. I remember a year ago they were talking about how aggressive they wanted to go, and they started off with a couple of small countries, but now it seems like they've gone for the really big ones. So how did that come about? What are you excited that they're going to be able to accelerate what you can do?
So if you look at Binance's whole focus this year in 2019 has been all about how to solve the fiat bridges globally.
Yeah.
And so when you look at that, they've been either building it themselves or partnering or acquiring. So when we started having this talk, it usually depends how different acquisition talks start in different ways. This more or less started about what can we do to build out the ecosystem, what can we do to make things easier in India. And then it went towards realizing that oh shit, we're all thinking the same thing. Why are we even on two different sides? Let's just work together so that we can go faster. So that's how this whole thing happened with Binance. And the mission alignment, because when I've been building WazirX all this while, the core was how do you make sure that everyone in India and eventually everyone around the world can enter crypto in the fastest possible way. Like what I believe is, if I meet a person who's never been into crypto, and if I tell them about crypto and they're excited, they should be able to enter this ecosystem within 5 minutes. If we can achieve that, I think that's when mass adoption will happen. Because right now you have to handhold them, and if you don't have in most of the countries, especially the developing countries, it might take 6 hours, 12 hours, or even 1 or 2 days to buy your first crypto. So that's where the disparity exists today. Yeah. So I want to solve that, and I think that's what Binance wants to do it. And so when this mission alignment happened, we realized that we can go faster together rather than all of us trying it differently. So that's how this whole deal happened.
So I know Binance have partnered with Trust Wallet as well. So at the moment in India, if someone has a smartphone, they can download Trust Wallet and open a Bitcoin or Binance address, and you or I can send them crypto in under a minute. But the next step you're saying is getting verified with their ID and being able to buy it themselves. And you're hoping to cut that process down just like a Coinbase or any normal exchange would.
Yes, because every year less and less people would be willing to part with their Bitcoin just like that.
Yeah.
So while I can send it, I can only send it to 5 people. How do I send it to 5,000? Because every crypto gets expensive. So I think people would want an easy way to buy in on their own. And and besides, not everyone has rich friends who will send them cryptos.
Yeah.
So I think this is the part that we are trying to solve. Where how can you buy it yourself in under 5 minutes? I think that has to happen.
Yeah. Have you had to play around with any of the Lightning wallets, like Wallet of Satoshi or Blue Wallet?
I think I've tried Blue Wallet. Which was that wallet which went viral on Twitter at one point?
Wallet of Satoshi, I think.
Okay, so one of them I tried it out. There was this whole the pass it on thing happening. Realized. Yeah. So I think someone sent it to me. Then I tried out the wallet and I passed on the torch. I think something was happening during that time.
Yeah.
That's when I tried it.
Okay.
But I think I'm still to find more use cases around that for myself personally. Yeah. I've seen they also have these dApp browsers with usable products in them,
Yeah.
where you can just connect your wallet and use those products. So yeah.
I see one of its weaknesses is that you need to have the amount locked in there that you want to send through the channel. But I think that that's not a problem in places like India, where a lot of people are going to be sending, a dollar, 10 cents here and there, and it does centralize it a little bit. If say WazirX are running the Lightning node, but it doesn't really matter in places like that if you have a Lightning node in each region in India or something. So I think that's where it's got heaps of potential.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I would love to see more and more companies getting into. I think even us, we want to have our own node eventually, so that people can just use it. It's just that so many things to be built.
Yeah.
But I think we'll definitely go in that direction. And I think every exchange and every product out there will eventually have these nodes, making it very easy for people to just then be able to transfer effortlessly. I
Fantastic.
think that's definitely going to happen.
Well, I've absolutely loved it today. I definitely want to come to India. I'm mad about cricket. I love Indian food. We'll have to go to a cricket game together. But any final thoughts for people at home? Anything that's really important that we haven't spoken about, or just outside crypto and the technology space, or any thoughts you want to wrap up with?
I think we've spoken a lot about everything, crypto and the Indian ecosystem. So it's all good. But I think the next couple of years, I see India as being one of those, next emerging markets for crypto. And that's why I think if you see, the world is suddenly taking notice of India as a market. And India has always traditionally been like a couple of years, behind in these adoption curves. But when it adopts, it shoots up
Yeah,
because of the sheer size of the market. So I think that's what is going to happen to India and crypto in the next couple of years. And the more we all do these kind of things, I think the more awareness we can spread in India.
for sure. Well, Nischal, I've thoroughly enjoyed that. I thank you so much for joining us. I'll put all the links to follow you guys and WazirX, sorry, in the description below. But thanks so much for joining us today, mate.
Yeah, thanks for having me on the show, Alex, and have a good day.
Thanks, guys.